Well, hello everyone. October 20, and Jarrod and I have been pretty lax on getting out and telling a story on what our season has been so far. But today, it's a windy day. It's Sunday afternoon. Just got done with Pee Wee football yesterday. The season ended, so it's allowing a little more time to get out. But so what we're doing today is we've been after a giant whitetail, and he finally showed up, and we've figured out that he's kind of in an area where another buddy of ours has permission on. And we also found out that he broke some tines. So he went from probably a 190s buck down to probably upper 170s at this point in time. Not saying he's not a shooter, but we really are excited about another mule deer that I've been after for a few weeks. He's been showing up to a water tank. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go in here, we're gonna pull some cameras, pull the blind out that I had set up for this whitetail earlier in the season. And we're gonna move everything, and we're gonna put all our chips for the mule deer spot. So mule deer are extremely hard to take pictures of, but we feel like at least if we have some cell cams in the area, it'll kind of give us an idea. If he passes by one, it'll, maybe give us a piece of the puzzle later on. So anyway, don't really plan on doing a whole lot of hunting today. It's kind of hot and windy, but yesterday a buddy of ours shot a nice 190 some inch mule deer, and they were just cruising back to town at noon and ended up shooting a giant. So you got to be out to kill a big one. So that's what we're doing today. We're just going to kind of do some inventory stuff and move some stuff around, and we're going to glass the last couple hours and be able to kind of hit the ground running with a decoy if we need to. So pretty cool day today. Time with a good buddy, and we'll see if we can't set things up for the season. Perfect. Well, we just checked trail cameras again, and he hasn't been here for like 10 days. So on this water tank, just a beautiful windmill the farmer has allowed me to keep on. And this big muley was running through this area quite a bit about 2 weeks ago, but it's just not been regular anymore after they cut the crops up over my shoulder. So Jarrod and I, we're gonna take the last couple hours of daylight here, and we're gonna cover a couple different spots and try to put some cameras up, try to get an idea of where this deer is moving around. Probably gonna have to go about a mile south of here. There's an uncut milo field right now, and so we'll just have to see if we can locate him tonight, maybe just standing up in the milo, and at least it'll give us an idea. It's all about puzzle pieces, today. If we can get another one put together, great, and see where we're at. So that's what we're gonna do the rest of the day. All right, good morning everyone. October 24th today, and Jarrod and I are heading out for a glassing session. It's Thursday morning, and we are just kind of gathering all our stuff, transferring stuff from pickup to pickup, because I've got my pickup loaded up with a new blind and cameras and feeder and stuff like that to go to an area where my dad has a pasture. Gonna set up for a big whitetail later, but right now Jarrod and I are heading out for a big muley, and we shall see how this thing goes, and hopefully we catch big boy this morning on his feet. Moon's overhead. It's a nice chilled morning, not crazy cold, probably 50, but we're gonna go see if we can find him. All right, morning everybody. It's October 25th, and sun's just getting ready to rise behind us. Jarrod and I jumped up on this old house. When you're from western Kansas, you got to find anything you can to get up high and glass. So that's what we're doing this morning. Now we got a lot of good terrain to our west. We got cut corn, standing milo, pasture, water, drilled wheat. Just a huge expanse of land that we're trying to cover with glass, and it's really difficult, but we got a really big mule deer in the area, and we're trying to locate him this morning, and we've never seen him on the hoof, just trail cameras. So we're gonna jump over to another glassing spot, but yeah, just a beautiful morning. The moon's overhead, and hopefully he stays on his feet. All right, boys and girls, it's a good day. What's crazy how the good Lord works. We're getting ready to head out of this area. I told Jarrod, I said, go check that camera with that tank again. Now it's been 2-3 weeks since we got a picture of this dude, and like we just need some sort of hot cold sign. Jarrod said that like an hour before. I'm like, you're right, we need some sort of indication, like where did he go? Because crops have been cut, we didn't know if he's still here or not. And we go to the tank, sure enough, we barely caught just one little glimpse of his left side, like barely. And you can't miss him because he's got a giant bladed stinking thing. And then we decided, you know what, he's got to be in this tall corn. So we just kept glassing the rows, and sure enough, Jarrod spotted him. So we feel like we can get to within, I'm going to say, 60 and show him an equal. So we'll see if it works. Wind shifted. It's out of the west pretty good right now. It's supposed to be shifting out of the south, or out of the north, I mean. So we may have to kind of reverse our tactics a little bit. So we'll have to see here. All right, guys. Well, we're glassing this cornfield right here. We're looking down the rows because at 4:30 this morning, we just got a picture of the big dog at the water tank behind us. He's been heading up to this failed cornfield. This kind of stuff they're not going to cut. It's like zeroed. There's no grain, but it's tall. Jarrod and I have been looking in every row, and he's got him. He's a jolly jumbo. Dude, there's a palm like this big. There's a doe, and then there's a freaking blade sticking up like this. Okay. All right, guys. Well, it's 1:15, and the wind has switched from the south, and now it's out of the northwest, so it was kind of a good time to find him. We kind of backed out, got to the pickup, got the bow, and we waited on the wind, and we're getting our north now. So I'm glad we kind of were in the middle of the stock whenever it started switching, because that would have been a disaster. So right now we're just kind of waiting, kind of chilling out. And we're going to crawl down this edge, and we feel like he's about 60 yards from the edge of this cut line. So just kind of a patience game right now. Doe was more north and east, and he's not, I can't see him in that row anymore, so I'm guessing that wind switched and they felt like they had to move. So we'll just have to figure out where he's at. Yeah, well, I would say, yeah. Good news, guys. We got
Good news, we got 85 yards. 85. Yeah. So I see him plain as day. The doe's south of him just a little bit. And we just got to get in there. We got him. We'll get him. Alright guys, so we are in here tight. I think we're probably like 30 to 40. We cannot see the doe or the buck right now, but we know we're close because we ranged backwards to the edge. So we're in here, we're going to wait for him to stand up and hopefully get an arrow in this big boy. Probably not a lot of pre-roll going to happen, but he is magnificent. We'll show him off when he's down. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Come on, buddy. Can you film him? Can you film him? Can you see him? Gonna haul ass is what he's doing. I don't know if I had to just. Can you raise up with me? Yeah. Okay. Got him? Okay, go ahead. Super low. Super low. Okay, he's gonna, Travis, he's coming right here. Right here, 20 yards. Shoot him. 20 yards. think I got him.
I think you got him. Keep an eye on him. Keep an eye on him.
All right, guys. Well, we've been playing cat and mouse in this tall corn, and thankfully the heads-up decoy bailed us out. These deer were running all over the place trying to kind of keep tabs on one another. There's one doe and 2 bucks and our big boy, you know, and then like a smaller 4x, but basically got 2 shots, and every single one of them, you could just hear the arrow hitting corn. And on this last one, he was only like 20, and I seen like the top maybe 6 inches of his back, and I was just trying to like get cute with that pin right there on that very top line, trying to just squeeze one in him. And my arrow just kept, I could just hear it hitting corn all the way to him, and I hit something up front, and he turned and he just looked like he was plowing. So I thought maybe I heart punched him, and Jarrod ended up finding my arrow, and it looks like I basically, you know, the broadhead barely kind of got a little bit of meat. There's no blood on the arrow at all. Just like 2 inches onto it maybe. And we seen him a half a mile east of here. So unfortunately, his vitals were guarded today, but I feel like he should have been dead. I don't know how far the first shot was. I had the sight dialed clear back to what I thought was like 30, and maybe he was more like 40, because I heard it hitting corn. I know he was well within bow range twice, and the heads-up decoy brought him back. So just true testament to that decoy. He was still trying to find his doe. He was trying to find any deer. So he came kind of running back down one of our rows, and I really thought he was dead. And I mean, I don't know what you can do. I wasn't going to aim above him, obviously, and I just didn't feel comfortable just aiming right at his neck. So that would have been the only other option, is just to shoot him in the neck. So I don't know. Unfortunately today it wasn't the time. We don't know. So it wasn't meant to be, and we'll just keep hunting. That's all we can do. All right, everybody. Sorry to stop the video right here, but I have to explain kind of the next steps. But first I'm going to back up a little bit. I want to explain how the deer came in and what happened on getting him in. Things got pretty chaotic with the camera and the tall corn and the decoy and the wind, and it just got chaotic. But anyway, basically what happened is I put the decoy up after the doe had gotten up. I was trying to slip in to within about 20 yards of her, which would have put him at about 25 or 30. And she got up. I don't know if she heard something or just kind of got up on her own and happened to see a little bit of movement, but she ended up bounding off just about 50 yards. And being that the corn was so tall, the buck got up and was confused. He didn't know what was going on. So he was out there at probably 75 or 80. And so I grabbed the heads-up decoy, mule deer doe, and raised it up above the corn and just kind of made him think that, you know, deer kind of scattered. And a lot of times what mule deer will do, just because they're herd animals, he's kind of the king of that herd. He will try to round up and go and gather all of the deer in that herd whenever they get dispersed. So that's what was happening. This deer actually took a big circle, tried to get downwind, came in. I came to full draw, and as you saw in the first shot, I ended up hitting several corn stalks, but that deer had busted in so quickly I couldn't tell distance. I was trying to do my best to judge distance, and my arrow ended up getting knocked down by some of the corn between me and him. Now, the catch-22 with the cornfield, the positive obviously is it's tall enough that we can get in close. The wind was loud, the leaves were rustling on the corn, and it allowed us to cover our sound and get in there close. The negative, obviously, is that you can't get an arrow through some of that. So I was having to stand up at full height and try to get just high enough that I could slip my arrow in over the top of some of the corn that was knocked down in order to get into his vitals. First shot, again, didn't work out. Fast forward to after the first shot, he ran off, still confused. He's seen a doe over here, a small buck over here. We raised the decoy up again and kind of shadowed him a little bit, and he thought that we were another deer again. So that's, again, the power of that heads-up decoy whenever you're trying to gather a herd, or whenever you're going to try to make him think, or a big buck to think, that you're a lost doe. So that's what was happening. He came in for a second time. He actually as you heard Jarrod's frantic voice, he's like, he's coming, 20 yards, shoot him right here. You know, I was basically had my head down trying to figure out how many rows I needed to get over to try to get a shot. And he's the one that picked a row and closed the distance to us for a second time, which is bonkers. It was crazy, and we weren't expecting it. So thankfully it happened. Now fast forward to the second shot. When that arrow left, I hadn't seen a taller corn stalk about halfway between us and him. So what had happened was I saw just the vitals, and all I could see was about the top 8 to 10 inches of his body. And I thought, no problem, I can just drop that arrow in right over top of that stuff and get behind the shoulder and be okay. And I did not see, of course, you don't figure on the angle coming out of the bow a little bit lower, but that arrow had hit a corn stalk about halfway there. Thankfully, it continued its path and ended up probably going through a little bit more corn and hit him low, but behind the shoulder. So you can't see it, but if you watch really close, he had his chin down and he was running like a heart shot deer. And so when I saw that, I had a lot of hope that I had dropped right down into his heart and that we had this deer within 5 minutes. Well, fast forward, we go find my arrow. The arrow didn't hardly have any blood on it. It had about 3 or 4 inches of penetration, and that was it. We had no blood. So that's where we paused the video, and we pretty much left it with you all that we had lost him. It wasn't a lethal shot, no problem. Now, Jarrod and I shut the cameras off. We found his big running tracks that were bounding in that corn, and we were able to follow those for quite a while. Now, again, not telling the story just because Jarrod and I were on our hands and knees a lot trying to figure out what was going on. The blood started picking up. Now, we were in about 20 acres of standing corn, and that corn didn't produce grain, so they didn't harvest it. But on the outsides of that circle, they had cut the corn that was good. And so we just kept following in that tall corn, the running tracks and then the blood. And it started getting pretty encouraging as we went because the blood kept getting better and better. We got to the edge of the tall corn and started glassing, and thankfully we ended up finding him and his doe bedded outside the tall corn in the short stuff. And we didn't know how, his demeanor was. We didn't know what his condition was at that time, but he did have his head up and he did lay with his doe again. So at this point, I left Jarrod at the edge of the tall corn and I crawled out, and I got to within about 65 or 70 yards, but that wind was out of the north so drastically that I just couldn't find myself to try to take a shot. At one point, the buck even stood up, repositioned, and I actually came to full draw one time, but I just couldn't bring myself to pulling the trigger in that wind. And I thought, I'm just gonna have to be patient. Well, I knew that this deer wasn't right or didn't feel good because he would just randomly get up and he would just jailbreak like 150 yards and then he would just hit the ground again. And I think he sensed that we were close, but he never did stand up and look at me. He didn't ever act like he seen me. He just kind of had a weird sense about him that something wasn't right. This kept happening over about a half a mile of distance. He ended up crossing a county road. At that point, I just hunkered down in the ditch, called Jarrod, and I said, hey, please come pick me up. I got to have some water. It had been 4 or 5 hours at that point that I've been following him. And he bedded down again. And once Jarrod came to pick me up, they had worked out into a bigger field of cut corn that transitioned into a wheat crop that was wheat stubble at that point. So Jarrod had told me, he goes, I don't know, we're losing light. We have about an hour left at daylight. He goes, I personally feel like you can actually close the distance on foot at this deer if you were to just run at him. And I've seen this go awry in the past where they get an adrenaline dump and a wounded deer will run miles and you won't ever find him again. So that was where I was not agreeing with Jarrod at this point in time. Now, after I got a drink of water, Jarrod dropped me off in a different location. I went out, and luckily the doe had left the buck because they were just, frantic. And finally he just wasn't feeling well and he just laid down on his own, and the doe finally got the hint that it was time to leave. So now it's just me and him. I go out and I just kept getting closer and closer. And he just kept, moving on me, repositioning. And finally I got to the point where I was at about 150 yards and I thought, I'm going to do what Jarrod asked or told me to, and just sprint as hard as I could at him, because we noticed that when he would move, he would only be able to go about 50 or 75 yards, and then he would act like he was out of breath and have to lay down again. So to back up a little bit on that shot, I hit right behind the shoulder. The tip of that Grim Reaper went in the chest cavity, but only about an inch. So I don't know if I punctured a lung or what had happened. It seemed that way, but the wound was really big. There was a lot of blood on the side of that deer, just because it actually had sliced the back of his leg along with poking in the chest cavity. So he was struggling. I decided to sprint, and I got to within about 75 yards, and that deer stopped and looked back at me. And I think that was kind of his, telling that I'm done. And finally he just kind of looked back over his shoulder and just hit the ground, laid down. And at that point I'm out of breath. I slipped to within about 50 yards, hit both knees, gathered myself, took a lot of deep breaths to catch my breath. And I told myself, as soon as he stands up again, I'm going to give it to him. And that's what happened. He kind of got a little bit nervous again after he caught his breath, stood up. He was kind of weak in the legs, and I was able to deliver a perfect double lung 50-yard shot at that point in time. Now, this is where I was able to turn my cell phone on and kind of give you a play-by-play as to what had happened. I do have to apologize for not being able to tell the story with either a GoPro or Jarrod's big camera at that point in time. We had just been working together so much to try to get this deer down that we just kind of forgot about video. I will have to say I'm a little bit emotional as I come into the cell phone video after the fact. Obviously, I had worked extremely hard throughout the day. It also was really heartbreaking for me because that day was my daughter Timber's 6th birthday. And I had told my wife and had already made plans that as soon as they got off the bus at 3:30, I was going to be home so that we could celebrate the afternoon and evening with Timber. We went out that morning planning to just, be out until 2 or 3 o'clock, and then I could be home with the family for the birthday. Now, as you know, if you hit a deer, wound a deer, you have to follow up, and you have to make sure that you do everything you can to try to retrieve that animal. So I'm sitting here as a dad, torn between going after a wounded deer or just completely leaving and getting home on time. So of course I'm texting my wife, apologizing, and I am not doing well at this point in time emotionally, especially with the blessing that I was just given with this giant mule deer. I was able to get it loaded and get home as quickly as I could, but unfortunately it was later than I wanted to be there. And it was definitely one thing that is very heartbreaking. So just wanted to kind of give you a warning on the emotional behavior coming up here on this cell phone video, but I want to give you guys a little bit of a warning going into it. But anyway, I'll let it happen now where I pick up where the cell phone video after the shot. So appreciate you guys watching and enjoy the rest of the video. All right, guys. Well, the sun is setting behind me, and I'll be honest, I'm just a little bit tore up right now. We've been after this giant mule deer all day long, and he was bedded in standing corn, which was not very good corn. We were able to get him decoyed in twice, and the first time I hit a whole bunch of corn, which is an understandable deal. And then the second time I also hit corn, but it ended up hitting him kind of like in the armpit, maybe on the back of the leg. I'm wondering if I didn't maybe scar his heart a little bit or something. I'm about ready to go up to him. But basically we found him several times rebedded in picked corn, which is extremely difficult. And the closest I could get was like 80, and I was not able to get a shot off. So I just kept playing cat and mouse with him the rest of the day. The sun's setting behind me, and we watched him come across this cornfield behind me and into this wheat stubble field. And once he got out into this wheat stubble, I was like, you know what? The sun's setting. I'm just going to sprint and see if I can keep up with him, because I knew he was hurting, and he finally just gave up and laid down, and I got to 50. He stood back up broadside, and I just ran a Grim Reaper through him at 50 yards, and it absolutely 10-ringed him. So I am a little shook up because this evening, today, is my daughter's 6th birthday. And I can tell you I'm not proud to be out here deer hunting. But I had an arrow in this thing at like 1 o'clock and was planning on being home after school. And I am sitting here at sunset, finally getting this buck. And I'm not happy that I'm missing my daughter's birthday, I'll tell you that. However, I did not want to just leave a wounded deer. So, as you can tell, I'm not handling it well, but I felt like I had to follow up on the deer. So I got to give my daughter, Timber Joe, a big squeeze when I get home and tell her I'm sorry. So we've got Jarrod's dad, Lee, coming with a Polaris, thankfully, and we are going to load this thing up and take some pictures. And I am so thankful for this deer. So we got to get him loaded up to town, and man, this is crazy. So I'll show him to you here pretty quick.
Well, this is the buck we named Caribou, and for good reason. You can see gigantic paddles that are just ridiculous. I got trail photos of this deer at like 5 feet from my trail camera, drinking out of a water tank, and it basically just filled the screen with paddle. And I knew he was something special. I just wanted to see him on the hoof, and man, that thing is rather large, don't you think?
It is a monster.
That's definitely the most impressive mule deer I've shot. I mean, frame-wise, this thing's giant.
Well, yeah, you didn't.
I pretty much, I almost cut off his front leg. I mean, look at that.
Yeah, well, that's why he's hurt.
It poked right there.
It poked in, and that's why he, like, it just hit enough stalks or that leg that it took off. It just couldn't penetrate. I mean, you basically 12 ringed him 5 hours ago.
I mean, that was the shot I wanted. Obviously, it's just it ended up not getting the penetration because of the stinking corn.
Great effort on the persistence. No water, no food.
Yeah, it was without water and food for the
hours.
day. But you know, you got to do what you got to do. That thing's a giant body. Look how long he is.
That is one of the most impressive mule deer that a guy could ever find. He's awesome. Congrats, bro.
Thank you, sir. Let's get a couple photos.